virus. Well, federal government frontbencher Simon Birmingham is urging organisers of today's March for Justice to reconsider their refusal to meet with the Prime Minister in his office, rather than expect him to go to them. Rallies calling for federal politicians to act on issues of sexism, misogyny and dangerous workplace cultures are set to be held in many locations across the nation, including outside Parliament House. Liberal Senator for New South Wales, Holly Hughes, has questioned the motives of those gathering for the Canberra rally, tweeting this morning, "So it's not really about achieving anything. Again, we see this issue turn political, so no longer for all women, but just those from the same political perspective." She says she'll be using her voice inside the Parliament instead.
It's really disappointing that the organisers have decided to reject the Prime Minister's offer after they had originally accepted it. And, that's, for me, there's a number of reasons why that's disappointing. And, I apologise if I'm someone who's a little too outcome-driven, but when you're invited into one of the most powerful offices in the land to discuss how you can affect actual change, I think you should take that offer up. I'm a mum of three. I run a behavioural program for my autistic son. You don't get anywhere standing at the door screaming. You get much more done with constructive conversation, and I'm very, very disappointed that that offer has been rejected, and I know the offer's still open, and I hope the organisers will reconsider. The other thing is I'm struggling to find what the march is actually trying to achieve. We hear lots of slogans, it's time for change, and no one is denying that we don't have to do better. But there's nothing tangible being suggested, nothing is being asked for that can be delivered on, and so I think that there do need to be more constructive conversations. The other thing that disappointed me was that we hear that all MPs and senators were invited. Well, I know that's not the case. So I do know that a number of coalition colleagues haven't been invited to today. My office has triple-checked all of our inboxes, junk, you name it, and we received no information about it, and a number of my colleagues have confirmed the same. So I am always concerned when we start to see selective invites and that it's coalition women who seem to be excluded and are fair game for any attacks. We don't see an outcry when I was certainly told to go and hang myself, and then the next day it was kindly followed up with an observation that I hadn't and an offer of assistance. The abuse that a number of my colleagues have got. Senator McKenzie had a media commentator suggest she do a particular thing with her guns, causing herself self-harm. And there was absolutely no outcry when any of these things occurred. So it does get a bit frustrating when it does seem to be it's about supporting all women except conservative women. And again, we're seeing conservative women weren't necessarily invited to today, despite the claims.
Former Liberal MP Julia Banks is actually speaking at the Melbourne March for Justice. She famously quit the party a few years ago after calling out bias and bullying against women in politics. She's called the federal parliament the most unsafe workplace in the country. Do you agree?
And I'm sorry if Julia experienced that. I never served with her. I've only been here just shy of 2 years, and I certainly haven't experienced that. Is it a complicated workplace? Yes, it absolutely is. Do we need to do better? Yes, we do. But I don't think it's just about all the women standing together in solidarity and support. I think it's about everyone doing better, and I think we need to take this conversation to the men. That women need to be better respected. And that starts with our sons. That starts when boys are young, that there's a much better level of respect and appreciation across the genders. We saw last year in my hometown of Sydney a number of private boys' schools conducting themselves incredibly poorly around muck-up days, and particularly in their attitudes towards women. And I think one of the things that we do need to start looking at, and some of the real changes we could look at, is that it's not all men who behave badly, but quite often men do know when their mates or their colleagues are displaying these sort of attitudes or behaviours. We need to see those men step up and call it out. We also need women to step up and call it out. We saw incredible outrage from Senators Wong and Keneally and Gallagher in the last sitting period directed towards Minister Reynolds in the chamber and outside. We learned today about the leaking of a Labor chat group, and I hope that these senators continue that outrage. But I'll be interested to see whether they can muster that.
Does it also depend on...
It is partisan.
Does it also suggest it's time for some men in the government to take the step outside the building, perhaps? So many saying they're too busy or checking their diaries to go and meet with some of them, or some of the others have indicated that they will be attending or meeting. Is it a bit of a poor look that these people make the journey to the capital and they can't even go outside to see them? Should the Minister for Women at least attend?
Look, the Minister will make up her own mind whether she's attending or not. I know that she's expressed the invitation for them to meet inside the building. I personally feel being inside the building is where you're going to affect the change. I worked really hard to get into Parliament because Parliament's where we make the laws.
And you said you'll be using your voice inside the Parliament to affect change, but last year's budget allocated $2.1 million for the Respect at Work project after the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Kate Jenkins, made 55 recommendations. The government pledged to establish a dedicated council to provide practical support to employers and employees to prevent and address sexual harassment in workplaces. 6 months on, there doesn't seem to have been any concrete action taken on that. Have any members been approached or appointed to that council? Has anyone established what the council will do? Has any of that money been spent?
We talk about money being allocated for issues and causes around women, and that just continues to marginalise women. When we look at budget initiatives, when we look at programs, whether they're employment related or whether security related or health related, they're all programs for men and women. But when we talk about things in the context of just for women, and I think that it also downplays, and, you know, it happens in this workplace and I'm sure it happens in others, that it's not just young women who sometimes feel vulnerable. It can also be young men. And it's a continual diminishing of their experience, and it's the continued marginalisation of women when you only talk about programs for women and ignore that there's expenditure in programs that benefit women, benefit families, benefit all of us, in the same way. And I think, it shouldn't be an us and them. And until we start having sensible conversations about how everyone works better together and what people will tolerate, but it's every workplace that needs to look at themselves. I've got girlfriends that are out there marching today who've worked in law firms and had the most horrific experience.
And I guess that's what this council was supposed to be established to implement, to look at some of those problems that they might be facing.
Yeah, and look, it'll be, as we go forward, I'm sure there'll be not only the council but other things that will look at how we better address these situations. And no one's denying it's, not ideal. But we are seeing more women enter Parliament, and I fought hard to be here. And using the voice inside the tent is incredibly important. And I hope that we see, a lot of the women that are attending today that feel this way get involved politically if that's what they want to do.
Liberal Senator for New South Wales, Holly Hughes, will be staying inside the House today as that rally takes place outside Parliament in about an hour or so's time.